Before we start, we advise viewers to consider carefully. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. At a federal court in Manhattan, during one of the most closely watched trials in entertainment history, the bailiff called out a name that instantly changed the whole room: Samuel L. Jackson, a legendary actor, one of the biggest names in black entertainment, and now a surprise witness. Most people thought he'd speak for a minute or two, maybe drop a few comments about the industry. Instead, he opened that folder and started reading. As soon as he began, it was clear this wasn't just a statement. This was a turning point, a link between Diddy and Lori Harvey's controversial relationship, and a wave of new civil lawsuits now threatening to shake Steve Harvey's public image. But Jackson didn't stop there. He told the court that while Diddy was in the spotlight, Steve Harvey worked behind the scenes, passing along NDAs, publicly praising, and according to Jackson, helping keep everything under wraps. Emails, recordings, dates. Jackson laid it all out. This wasn't just a celebrity cameo. This was a moment that could flip the entire trial upside down. Over the next 20 minutes, we went from whispers to solid proof, from private calls to courtroom testimony. This wasn't just testimony, it was a total takedown. Right from the start of Diddy's trial, no one had put Samuel L. Jackson on the witness list. All eyes were on the music mogul, his defense team, and former partners. But by day 8, everything changed. A sealed subpoena quietly filed by federal prosecutors was suddenly unsealed. And then the court summoned one of the most recognizable voices in Hollywood history. When Samuel L. Jackson showed up, it wasn't as a celebrity, not as a guest, but as a man with evidence and 20 years of silence to break. And that silence started back in 2001, the day his daughter Zoe was born. That's when Jackson swore he'd never let Hollywood touch her the way they had so many others. He told the court, "I witnessed what happens when bad people hold power, so I paid attention." What he started then wasn't a collection, it was a shield. Jackson quietly stored text messages, email chains, secret rumors, and untraceable recordings. He wasn't chasing stories. He was building a firewall for the day things went too far. And that day came in 2018. Jackson was on the set of Shaft when an assistant handed him a USB drive after a late-night shoot in Brooklyn. No context, just one line. "You'll want to hear this." It was a recording, Steve Harvey's voice speaking directly to Lori. But this wasn't warm advice. And this isn't the voice of a father checking in. This is something else. Jackson describes it as a high-stakes etiquette guide, a strange script for how to present yourself in elite circles. This is the strategy. Jackson calls it a grooming script, and there's one line that haunts him. "A boss ain't your boyfriend, he's your board of directors." At first, Jackson said he thought it was just a skeptical parenting style, but he marked it, dated it, and filed it away. A few months later, another clip surfaced. This one came from a former troubled engineer. In the video, Diddy's in the studio kitchen, mocking Steve Harvey and laughing as he picks out an outfit for Lori for a public event. It's not just awkward, it reveals something deeper. Jackson saw a pattern he'd seen before, one that's destroyed many young stars. So he started mapping the timeline. He searched flight records, saved Instagram posts, cross-checked appearances with messages, and what he uncovered wasn't luck. It was a system inside the courtroom. He began presenting it. An email from Harvey's office forwarded a non-disclosure agreement labeled as a lifestyle partnership. Another voicemail noted Diddy referring to Lori as the green room deposit fee. Jackson didn't rush. He let the weight of these words speak for themselves. Then he gave it a name: parental negligence, career exploitation, and a power control system, not human relationships. But honestly, he added, people were also moved. The courtroom tensed up. Some reporters were wide-eyed. Even the judge furrowed his brow. Behind the defense table, Steve Harvey didn't move. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. Then the defense team tried to throw shade at Shay. They said Jackson was bitter for never landing a bad boy movie role. He didn't blink. He smiled. He said, "I actually turned down that guest role because the script had me slapping a 21-year-old intern. Turns out they made that scene real." Even the jury laughed. The judge stood firm on his ruling, but Jackson wasn't done. His final move that morning was a coded, quietly devastating message sent by a senior member of Steve Harvey's team. The article said, "This connection with Lori Diddy will keep us going for another decade with the Family Man crew." The whole courtroom seemed to freeze at that line. The bell rang, but it didn't feel like a break. It felt more like a countdown. After the courtroom settled from the initial evidence, the prosecutors asked Samuel L. Jackson to explain a term he'd mentioned in pretrial interviews, the so-called 8-step grooming ladder. Jackson didn't hesitate. He pulled out a worn leather notebook and placed it on the witness stand. He called it the Red Ledger. He said he started this work back in 1993 while filming Jurassic Park. What began as a diary turned into a tracking system, one he used to record moments, patterns, and power plays in the entertainment world, especially those involving young women and men who claimed to be their mentors. And now he was going to use it to show the jury exactly how it all worked. He said the first step is approaching through admiration. An older gatekeeper spots a rising star, usually a young, impressionable person, and starts praising them publicly. In theory, it sounds like encouragement, but really, it opens a door. Jackson pointed to a 2017 radio show where Steve Harvey called Diddy a role model for Black entrepreneurship. 6 weeks later, Lori's modeling gig suddenly got canceled. She suddenly started spending time with bad boy staff in Los Angeles. That's step 2, Jackson said. Co-branding, joint photo shoots, matching outfits, appearances at award shows, even Father's Day posts. These aren't ordinary moments. They're marketing, fueling speculation about a relationship, subtle hints, all building the brand image. Step 3, exclusivity. The inner circle tightens. Managers take over. Friends disappear. New phone numbers get passed around. Old ones vanish. Jackson showed an email from Steve Harvey's assistant asking Vogue Arabia to cancel Lori's Dubai photo shoot due to family reasons. Jackson explained that grooming gets tighter, but Jackson made it clear this didn't start with Lori. It started before she was even born. He took the jury back to 1995, long before Lori's birth. According to Jackson, that's when Steve Harvey first entered Diddy's world. He claimed that during the Uptown Records era, when Diddy was still rising in the music industry, Steve Harvey signed a backstage deal with a promoter named Kirk Burroughs. The deal was straightforward. Steve would get free solo comedy shows booked through Burroughs. In return, he'd go easy on up-and-coming rappers during interviews. No tough questions, just light, friendly chats. Jackson called it a trade-off. Time for easy presentations, and for him, that was the start of Steve Harvey's long, behind-the-scenes role in helping build an image that protected guys like Diddy for decades to come. That's how Jackson framed the foundation laid not just for access, but for controlling the narrative. He said it turned journalists into lobbyists and comedians into brand ambassadors. Then he dropped something heavier, hinting at an old plea deal from a man named Jackson Townsend. Jackson had testified in court about an entertainment ring used to launder money through fashion stores in Atlanta. He even cited the case number. The prosecution entered it as evidence. Then came the twist. Jackson claimed Steve Harvey's daytime talk show acted like a reputation laundering machine for guys like Diddy, helping them shift from club owners and party kings to family-friendly philanthropists. To prove it, Jackson played a clip from a 2013 episode of The Steve Harvey Show. In the video, Diddy is promoting a new school fund just days after TMZ leaked footage of him throwing a kettlebell at a UCLA coach. The studio audience is clapping wildly on screen. In the courtroom, the jury watched with cold, unreadable faces. The defense called it Hollywood gossip. Judge Ramirez dismissed that. Rico said she cared about patterns, not headlines. Jackson moved on to step 8, profiting fully from the bloodline. He read aloud a Christmas card supposedly sent by Diddy to Steve and Marjorie Harvey in 2020. The handwritten note inside said, "Family is the ultimate brand unity. Keep investing." He closed the card and looked at the jury. He said that was the image of step 8. Gasps were heard. The court reporter paused to reload her paper. But none of that prepared the room for what Jackson revealed next. He called it the Reality Edit, a collection of private videos and voice note files that he claimed came from whistleblowers inside the industry. The clips were gathered over more than 15 years. The lights dimmed the big screen behind him. Jackson stood next to a remote control, narrating the context live. Clip 1, 2009. A blurry iPhone video taken by a young man in St. Bart's. Diddy, Steve Harvey, and two unidentified executives raise champagne glasses while a young girl, believed to be Lori, then just 12, performs a rehearsed dance. A woman off camera is coaching on stage. Jackson paused the frame and pointed at Steve's smile. He said that was the moment a father became a recruiter. The second clip, from 2015. Behind the scenes at the BET Awards, Lori, now 18, is sitting in the makeup chair. A hairstylist whispers, "Dad said Puff will be here in 5 minutes." Lori replies, "All right, let's do it. I want to look older." Jackson asked the jury to notice the maturity of the team. The third clip, March 2019. A Soho penthouse kitchen, Diddy shirtless, is showing the chef how to plate oysters. "Sexy. She's going to eat up my whole chain. Cut the camera." Lori giggles. "Wild stuff." The chef looks at the camera and mumbles, "That's terrible." Jackson pauses. He says that chef quit the next day and messaged him directly after hearing his UNCF speech about protecting his daughter. His sworn statement was entered into evidence. Fourth clip, Steve Harvey during an online Zoom rehearsal for his inspirational tour. Thinking the recording was off, he jokes, "There's no sermon without Todd's kid. No difference between church plates and a rebellion deal." Then he brags that Diddy just wired a payment to Lori's LLC. Jackson leaves that question open. Fifth, he says, is the backbone of the grooming deal. As the clip ends, the room grows colder. Some jurors stare down at the floor. Diddy scribbles notes quickly. Steve Harvey wipes sweat with a folded tissue. And that's just the halfway point. By now, the jury has heard Jackson's voice. They've seen his records. They've watched the videos. But the prosecutors haven't stopped. And neither has he. The next evidence isn't about Diddy or Steve. This statement comes from Jackson's own daughter, Zoe. Prosecutors presented a sealed sworn statement from Zoe Jackson herself. Samuel didn't read every word but slowly summarized it for the court to hear. In it, Zoe wrote, "My dad's vigilance saved me from the pipeline that swallowed others." That line shifted the whole energy in the room. Even the skeptics started paying attention. But Jackson didn't show any emotion. He immediately went back to the receipts. That's when the court rolled in a big metal cart loaded with bank money boxes, each stamped Vista Aviation. Inside were 27 private flight logs spanning over a decade. Jackson leaned forward, glasses low on his nose, and started reading. The defense claimed any joint trips between the Harveys and Diddy were just coincidences, normal celebrity travel. Jackson was here to prove otherwise. He took the jury through it year by year, starting with 2010. Steve Harvey had publicly launched his mentorship program for at-risk teens in Chicago. Meanwhile, Diddy was supposedly vacationing in Italy, but according to the Vista flight logs, a private Gulfstream IV jet left Van Nuys on July 13th, headed to Nassau. On board were Sean Combs, Marjorie Harvey, and 17-year-old Laura Harvey. The panel reacted instantly. A juror was seen murmuring the number 17, but Jackson wasn't done. He moved on to the 2012 statement. This photo showed Steve Harvey's foundation paid the handling fees for a round-trip flight to Anguilla. The tail number Jackson mentioned also appeared on Diddy's vehicle later on. The receipts kept piling up. 2015, 2016, 2017. One flight record showed Lori flying with a crew of bad actors and a stylist known for wild outfits. Not just one flight, Jackson said. It's a breadcrumb trail, and he claimed the trail led Lori to the exact luxury villas and event spaces Cassie later described in her civil complaint. Next came phone records. Jackson narrated with a split-screen visual. On the left, Steve Harvey's morning show broadcast location in Atlanta. On the right, real-time ping signals from Steve Harvey's personal phone coming from cell towers in Anguilla at the exact time he was supposedly live on air. Jackson explained that episodes were pre-recorded to make it look like Harvey was working. Regarding the trip with Lori, The defense called it an exaggeration. The judge said that was acceptable. Jackson's voice never cracked. He didn't yell or dramatize the issue. He just closed the file and said, "The question isn't whether these trips happened anymore. The question is, what does a 50-year-old mogul and a comedy icon hope to gain by hiding them?" By the time the court took lunch, it didn't feel like a trial anymore. It felt more like an audit of influence, trips, in purpose. Something not just exposing behavior, but mapping it out. And Samuel L. Jackson, he wasn't a witness anymore. He was an investigator. After lunch, the courtroom lights dimmed again. A technician rolled in a 50-inch screen, and this time Samuel L. Jackson didn't stand. He sat there silently, holding a small remote. He calmly said that this photo was taken on September 3rd, 2018, 2 weeks before Lori Harvey turned 22. The location was a rental mansion in Martha's Vineyard, codenamed White Rabbit. The courtroom fell silent. Jackson pressed play. A pale green frame appeared on the screen. Night vision, a wooden house by the pool. The angle clearly showed this wasn't filmed by a person. It came from a security camera mounted on the wall. The sound was distorted, but the subtitles helped. Diddy's voice came first. "Give me the LV bag. Faheim." "Yeah, Faheim." Jackson clarified by emphasizing the double E, referring to Diddy's well-known head of security. Then came Steve Harvey's voice, clear and unmistakable. "You're amazing," he said, laughing in the background. Next, a rustling sound, a sharp noise, and then a line that made the entire courtroom freeze. Then, Rincer took her to do her makeup. Crackling sounds, a generator humming. The clip lasted less than 45 seconds. But when it ended, a police officer had to call for silence in the courtroom. Whispers everywhere. Reporters froze their notes mid-sentence. Jurors stared straight ahead. Jackson didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply stated the facts. The footage was provided by a former estate manager at the Vineyard, who discovered that Harvey's team never disabled the poolside security system. The video feed kept quietly recording without their knowledge or permission. Then Jackson gave context. The phrase "wash her off" matched descriptions given by Cassie Ventura and singer Dawn Richard in the civil case, describing what happened after Diddy's so-called eucalyptus oil bath incident. Before the women were asked to return, the camera was already rolling. But the most damning detail was Steve Harvey wasn't just there. He was standing a bag's length away, a burlap sack later seized by Homeland Security, believed to contain benzodiazepines and a prepaid Visa card. The defense tried everything. They suggested it might be fake, questioned the timestamps. At one point, they even floated the idea that Steve Harvey's image could have been inserted as a 3D hologram for comedic effect. The jury didn't buy it. They sat still, poker-faced, jotting down every mention of the word 3D image. Jackson remained unshaken. He reminded the court that phone metadata placed Steve Harvey in Martha's Vineyard that exact night, and Venmo records showed a $4,800 payment from Harvey's LLC to the property to extend the stay. Then Jackson read one last excerpt, a text message Lori sent to a friend the morning after the Vineyard gathering. Puff said, "My smile is pure gold when it comes to ranking. My dad kept telling me that ownership is everything. I felt like an asset. Nobody moves. And when the manager announced a break in the mid-afternoon, no one felt like it was actually break time. It felt like an awakening. This wasn't just a safety clip. This was a visual indictment of everything Steve Harvey claimed to stand for: family values, fatherhood, faith, and in just 12 short minutes, it all fell apart. When court resumed after the break, Samuel L. Jackson didn't waste time on emotion. He shifted focus to motive. He told the jury the issue wasn't just about conduct, it was about business, influence, and contracts tying it all together. He called it the win-in clause. Hidden inside Steve Harvey's 2017 multi-channel deal with Endeavor was a little-known addendum, Section 16C. Jackson held up the page with red underlines and read it aloud. In short, it gave Endeavor first rights to broadcast any Harvey-branded religious TV show, but with one catch: if any part of the production was funded by companies in Diddy's entertainment empire, Endeavor owed Diddy a cut of the profits. Translation: Steve Harvey's growing media empire, the documentary series, gospel shows, streaming plans all depended on keeping Diddy's favor. If the money stopped, the brand would crumble. Jackson laid out exactly how things went down. In 2019, a documentary series about contemporary gospel groups suddenly stalled in production. The project only got back on track after Bad Boy Ventures transferred $2 million cash to it. When the show finally aired, the title was changed to Sunday Service Praise Legacy, clearly linking it to Kanye West's choir brand and another connection to Diddy's influence network. But the real blow came right after. Jackson displayed internal email chains from Harvey's business team. A line hit hard like a freight train. L's companionship was still the steady symbol. Lori Jackson paused after reading. He let the word companion hang in the air, then said, "That's not an advisor. That's not marketing. That's persuasion dressed up in polite language." And then things got worse. He read a protected statement from a former chef in the Harvey household, under witness protection. The chef described a rehearsal dinner in 2019, a party meant to impress high-profile guests. According to the statement, Lori was asked to wear a white Tom Ford dress with no underwear. The reason? The guests liked her natural look and direction, but that instruction didn't come from Diddy. The chef said it came from Marjorie Harvey, citing guidance from Diddy's stylist. The defense immediately objected. They claimed it was irrelevant, but Jackson pushed back. "We pointed out Steve Harvey's financial dependence on media companies. Now we're showing behavioral concessions within the Harvey family?" The judge allowed it. Jackson didn't smile. He wasn't gloating. He just laid it out piece by piece. He explained that the Wangan clause created a spiritual programming channel. Cash only flowed if the Harvey brand stayed in Diddy's good graces. And to keep that status, he said, keep Lori always present, involved, complicit in a world she never asked to navigate. And then Jackson wrapped it up. He closed the loop with one final gut punch. He referenced a viral clip where Steve Harvey stood on stage and told dads, "Protect the gate to your daughter's house." Then Jackson looked at the jury and said, "Bitgate, Your Honor, it was hourly paid," and the homeowner sat right at the defense table. The whole courtroom gasped. You could hear a collective intake of breath as Jackson packed up his documents and returned to the bench. Some jurors leaned back. Reporters hurriedly pulled out their phones. No one said a word because this was no longer just testimony. This was the moment the court realized the story wasn't based on rumors, but built on records, contracts, deposits, directives, and at the center of it all, a daughter turned icon and a father who signed the deal. As the courtroom settled after Jackson's final bombshell, Diddy's lead lawyer, Brian Steele, stepped up, cocky, sneering, ready to douse the fire with anger. He didn't waste time. "Mr. Jackson," Steele said, "yes, you've spent decades playing larger-than-life heroes. Right, you're just acting today." Jackson didn't flinch. He folded his arms, looked straight at the jury, and said in his trademark deep voice, "Sir, there's no retrial in federal court." The defense tried to paint Jackson as a hypocrite. They pulled out red carpet photos, Jackson and Diddy smiling with industry folks, holding champagne glasses. You drank his booze, walked his red carpet, and now you call him a predator. Jackson calmly replied, "I was there to promote a film. I'm not the one teaching him how to treat young women backstage." The jury made no move. They kept writing. Then Steele tried to shift gears to deny the claims about Steve Harvey's parenting. "Is it true, Mr. Jackson, that you've never met Lori Harvey in private?" Jackson nodded. "That's right," he said without hesitation. "That's why I blame her dad, not her." He was gasping, not from shock, but from the truth. That moment was truly raw, heavy, and honest. He had just received what he thought was his last card and email from years ago. In the footage, Steve Harvey thanks Jackson for guiding him about Hollywood families. Steele hinted that Jackson turned private advice into a public weapon, but Jackson didn't even blink. "Exactly, I showed Steve how to set boundaries. He ignores everyone like your clients." Judge Morales overruled some objections, but still held that the overall picture stood strong. And Jackson, he stood taller than ever. Then came the moment no one was ready for. The prosecution played a mislabeled cassette tape taken from an abandoned storage unit once rented by a rogue employee. The courtroom darkened, the speakers crackled, and Samuel's voice came through strong. "Why do you act like a teenager?" Then Diddy's voice turned low and raspy. "They're grown now, and that's what I need." Glass clinking. Someone cut the music off. The tape stopped. The courtroom fell silent. When asked if the tape was real, Jackson nodded. He said he recorded the track back in 2003 at a private gathering after dinner at a Midtown spot. The insider called into Studio 23. "I brought a pocket recorder," he told the court, "because I saw the situation getting worse, and I figured if anything went wrong, proof would be crucial." He stood up. "But for years, I kept it hidden because no one wanted to hear the ugly background noise behind the flashy videos." The defense objected, citing chain of custody issues. Judge Morales overruled. The jury could decide for themselves. Then Jackson dropped one final twist. A teenage laugh echoed from the back. He identified it as Justin Combs, Diddy's son. "That night," Jackson said, "I realized this wasn't just a cycle. It was becoming a generational phenomenon. And Steve Harvey was about to put his own daughter into the same machine." That statement turned the courtroom into a furnace. The prosecutors used it to build their case: a man seduces younger girls, normalizes a boundaryless environment, and shields it all with money, power, and silence. Jackson recalled that on the limo ride home, Diddy bragged, "The dads in Hollywood usually give me gifts. I make those gifts shine." The whole gallery was stunned. Earlier, court records showed Diddy had sent Lori a Cartier bracelet around the same time. As the tape played, the image of the mogul Diddy shattered. Instead, there was the hiss of a recorder, something that should never have been heard. But Jackson wasn't done yet. He testified that after criticizing Harvey's parenting, the whole industry turned cold. Scripts disappeared. Calls went unanswered. Charities withdrew their invitations. "That's the price you pay," he said. "The price for telling the truth in a town that sells make-believe." He told the jury about a scuffle at a charity golf event in 2021. Steve Harvey reportedly said, "Man, you just lost my sponsorship money." Jackson replied, "No, you lost your daughter's trust." The jury was scribbling like crazy. Even the judge's expression shifted, no longer neutral, edging toward alarm. Then came the final blow. Prosecutors revealed a screenshot of an encrypted message Diddy sent Harvey just days earlier. "Sam's ready to fight. Remind your girl about the NDA." The courtroom erupted. Judge Morales called for order. The defense objected, but the judge allowed it, citing verified metadata and its relevance to state of mind. And with that, Jackson wrapped up his testimony. "I can't undo what these men did, but I can promise they won't hide behind ratings and royalties anymore." He stepped down. Reporters rushed out of the courtroom. Diddy sat motionless, like a statue. Steve Harvey stared down at the floor. Outside, the world started reacting. Inside was total silence, but not the kind Jackson feared. This silence felt different. It meant the world was finally listening. When Samuel Ellis Jackson left the witness stand, the trial had completely shifted. What started as a celebrity drama had turned into something far more dangerous, a reckoning. Outside, commentators called it a major turning point. Inside, you could feel it too. Diddy said nothing. Steve Harvey, who used to command every room he entered, couldn't take his eyes off his desk. The courtroom was empty, but the internet exploded. Hashtags like "Listen to Sam," "Protect Black Daughters," and silence flooded every platform. Live streams of Diddy's shows plummeted in real time. Advertisers quietly started pulling out of Hardy-branded properties. Deals that were underway suddenly came to a halt. Inside the courtroom, though the jury wasn't officially sequestered, they were surrounded by officers, wide-eyed, notebooks full, some clinging to Jackson's words like anchors. The gates were rented by the hour. "Hollywood dads give me gifts. I'm not here for gossip. I'm here because the silence has become too loud." The next day, The government brought in financial experts to explain the money trail. But by then, the real currency had already changed hands. It wasn't just money or contracts anymore. It was something deeper. Trust. The kind that comes from seeing a man with nothing left to prove burn every bridge just to tell the truth. Samuel Jackson didn't walk out like a movie hero. He walked out like an archivist, a father, a witness. And in doing so, he didn't just expose a system. He forced everyone to witness it. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs is still underway. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs is still ongoing. The verdict hasn't been read yet. Testimonies are still being reviewed. But one thing is clear, the story will never be the same again.